Anin Kawea, Timakwen Dishnakaz, Alderville and Donjaba, Mikazidodem, Anishnawbek and Dow. I'm Sky Anderson. I am the Indigenous Engagement Advisor for the Center for Canadian Nuclear Sustainability at OPG. I am from Alderville First Nation, and today and this week we have been doing a treaty recognition week with Indigenous speakers to honor and to learn the importance of the treaties and to raise awareness within our agency. So today's speaker is Brandon Petahtegoose. He's from Atikameksheng, Anishnawbek, which is a community of Ojibwe people under the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. Brandon serves his community under community well-being and also sits on the Council of Knowledge Holders who work as independent advisors for the NWMO. He comes from a long line of Ogimak chiefs, going back to his distant grandfather who signed the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. Brandon's excited to share this special presentation by sharing history and knowledge from the Anishnawbek worldview and what it means to make a treaty. So welcome, Brandon. We're excited to hear you today.
Hello, bonjour. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm going to start off by speaking some of my language, the language of my ancestors, the language of my people. So, bonjour, Nidimak Natak Mikwich Kibishaye, Gishena Bay and the Go, Tikmikshing and Donje, Mashkos and Dodea, Debadagos King. I welcome you all today as my relatives, all of my relations. And when I say Ninde, Makanaduk, that's what I'm saying, all my relations. But I'm not just saying people, I'm talking about the trees, I'm talking about the birds, the waters, the moose, the deer, the insects, all the things that I am related to, especially those trees that provide that beautiful air for us to breathe. We have this beautiful symbiotic connection with the land, and how we have an amazing relationship with the land, myself especially. And so I also introduce myself in my spirit name, which is Anishnawbek. It could be translated to in English as the kind man. And I also announce my clan, which is Omashkos. Omashkos is the elk. That's my clan family. It's very important to announce your clan in my culture, your clan, your spirit name. And I also want to say Miigwech Kibajayek, meaning thank you all for being here today. And yeah, we're going to be running through some amazing content here over the next hour, right up till lunch here. And again, this is my presentation, so you could all see my screen here. This is the name of my presentation today, which is the spiritual intent of the treaty making process. So I'm going to be talking about some kind of deeper things today about the intention of treaty making, but it's also, I would say, it's very ground level. Like it's very this stuff should be very relatable, and I'm also going to share a bit of my Ojibwe language to help describe what I'm talking about. So I'm going to move on to my first slide here, and I don't have many slides today. It's going to be a lot of talking. So getting to myself, who am I? What treaty am I under? And that's a good question that I would ask each and every one of you. It's a good question to ask yourself. Maybe not who you are, maybe you know who you are, but a good question to ask yourself is, what treaty am I under? What, where I'm situated, where I'm living, because Canada is full of treaties. There's still some territory in BC, only in Canada, that still hasn't made a treaty. But if you're anywhere on this side of Canada, absolutely, you are under a treaty. And going with myself, who am I? Well, I'm Brandon Petahtegoose, but I am from a community called Atikameksheng, and I'm using the background today. It's actually a night shot of what it looks like in my at our sacred grounds in my territory, a place where we hold ceremony. It's actually the original community site of our people is where this background picture is taken. So Atikameksheng is how we used to describe where we're from. Atikameksheng is actually a lake. Atikamek is a whitefish. Sheng is it actually talks about the whitefish, and the female whitefish, as it goes on its side, it burrows into the ground right around this time of year, actually. And the male whitefish does the same. So the female whitefish goes on its side, you know, it swims like this, then it goes on its side and it lays eggs in the sand. And then the male whitefish does the same. He goes onto his side and they start fluttering their tails on top of the water. And so with that fluttering comes a sound, something you could see. There's glimmers of light on top of the water. And that's what sheng is. Sheng is like a sound. It's like shh, 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 shh. And it talks about the idea is the male laying their eggs or laying the sperm to fertilize those eggs below. So Atikameksheng doesn't just mean Whitefish Lake. That was our original name. It's actually could be better translated to as where the whitefish spawn. So that's where I'm from. It takes a bit to describe what the language is telling us, but this is how we get into it. And this picture here on the side of it's myself. And so I want to thank Sky Anderson for inviting me. And I don't know if she knew this, but I'm actually the face of my treaty, or at least I was in 2021. And so it says my name there, cultural revitalization. And that's what I'm passionate about, revitalizing the culture for our people and sustaining those traditional lifestyles that our ancestors had that we have today. An example, the last month I was actually working on deer hides and moose hides. So we do something called a hide camp in my community. And our people here, where I'm from, we are Anishnawbek. And some people might have heard of like Ojibwe people or Odawa people. Like that's where the word Ottawa came from, Odawa. There's also Potawatomi. And those are three nations that go under this this umbrella of being called Anishnawbek. And who are we? We're very sophisticated people. Our language, I would say, is the top 10. I've heard this before. It's the top 10 hardest languages to learn in the world. That's how, because it's so incredibly descriptive. It's easier to learn it when you're a child. We have many very strong belief systems. And one of the things I will be talking about as we go along is law and what law means to us. And I'm going to share that our concept of law in the Ojibwe language. And so, yeah, our belief systems going to that, you know, we have a very strong connection with our creator. And I'll go as far to say as we as Anishinaabe, and I'm speaking on behalf of my people here in my community of Atikameksheng, that we don't believe in God. Now you're going to say, whoa, you just said you're very spiritual. What do you mean you don't believe in God? Well, on the contrary, we don't believe in God. We know God. We know our creator. We have a serious relationship with our creator, and we always have. And that's something that's quite profound. We're some of the last peoples on earth to have been colonized, if you really think about it. And so our teachings and our connection with the land is still so fresh, and that's why that's why folks are coming to us, native peoples of Turtle Island, for answers. You know, there's a disconnect that people have, you know, overseas in different areas, or kind of all over, of that disconnect and that relationship with the land, and that relationship with the spirit, that relationship with creator. And our peoples, the Anishinaabe, we're actually the largest nation across Turtle Island. So our peoples, we migrated from the East Coast, and it's amazing because the people on the far, like the East Coast, the Mi'kmaq, the Maliseet, the ones that speak that Wolastoqey, there's different languages out there. but the Mi'kmaq especially, we share a lot of the same words in our language that we do with the people in the East Coast, because that we actually migrated from that time. There was a prophecy that the white man would be coming, and it was prophesized that that white man actually had two faces. They had one side and another, but it was one face. The one side showed a kind, loving people, and the other side was a bit confusing. The people didn't know what that vision was about. But as we know, as we come to know it, as later down the line, that the relationships that we built through the treaty making process, that not all of those treaties were upheld by the Crown, by the government of Canada. So that's when we go back to those prophecies of our people from long ago, we could start to understand why that elder at that time seen that face with two sides to it. And so today we wrap around the Great Lakes, and we stretch as far as Alberta. There's people that I can communicate in my language, Ojibwe, with people that are from Alberta, and even down into Montana in the stateside. So we're a huge nation. And of course, we have our own government, and our traditional form of governance was our clan system. And yeah, like in our territory, let's say our treaty territory, we would have different clan families all over, occupying different parts of land. And with each clan family had a chief. So myself, I'm from the Elk clan, and I do come from a long line of Ogamuk, as Sky mentioned, that I do come from a long line of chiefs, going back for like my dad, my grandpa was chief, and then going into when our people didn't even have family names. You know, we just had one name. That's who you were. Before you know, the aspects of colonization came, and you know, we had a first name and a middle name and a last name. Before that, we had our clan families, and then we had our spirit name. And our spirit name it embodies our spirit and our physical being together, like it's tied to us. And when we pass on, our spirit is eternal, and so is our spirit name. And then when a baby's born, the elders will talk to the ancestors. They'll go, who are they talking to? They're actually talking to, that's what I like this background. They're talking to the ancestors in the star realm, and they're retrieving those names of those people that once lived on this land. So it's incredible. And that might sound, you know, kind of far-fetched, but that's the true and deep connection of our people that we've always had. So going down that long line of chiefs, the names go Mangwa, and then there's a few more, Shawanagishik, and that's the chief that did sign. There's a couple more. They're kind of escaping me right now, but I'm just excited to move on to the next slide here. Oh, and before we go on, we look at this photo. This is that magazine that I was on the cover of last year. That was shown across all of the Robinson Huron Treaty territory, and I'll be sharing a map of how big our territory is. That this is Chief Dean Sayers from Batchewana, which is part of Sault Ste. Marie. He actually gifted Doug Ford a copy of the magazine that I'm featured on there. And you know what? It's fun. It's a fun photo because you could tell they're both smiling. And maybe not a lot of, there might be some people out there that don't have nice words to say about that man there, Doug, but that's fine. And some people say have good words. And I just showed this because it is an act of reconciliation. You all being here today as part of this presentation and learning is an act of reconciliation. You know, it's picking up some of those differences that we've had over time, and picking up some of those good things amongst those differences, and trying to work together and to learn from one another. And so I don't know if he kept that magazine or threw it away. Who knows? Maybe he threw it in the trash on his way out. I don't know, but it's just a fun photo. So that I just showed that to show to say why we're here. So talking about the Robinson-Huron Treaty, and I'm just looking at my time, being mindful of the time. This is a map that I just pulled up from this little site called Mapbox. This one popped up right away. I think it almost looks like Google Maps, but you could see just how extensive this map is. Down below, the farthest that the treaty border, treaty line comes down to is the place called Petahtegoose, which is, just north of Barrie. And it stretches quite far up. You can see the little city of Val-d'Or there. That's it doesn't go into Quebec, but it's quite far ahead, and then all the way to the it totally encompasses Sault Ste. Marie, and so it's quite an extensive territory. I wish I had another map to show you just how many First Nation communities are within the territory. There's at least 40 different First Nation communities. And this is this document onto the side, and I'm just looking at it now, and it's actually cut off a little bit on the right side. But what's important here is this is the actual document. This has been recreated actually, but this is how it's written. The original Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850. There's the Robinson-Huron Treaty and then the Robinson-Superior Treaty. So the Superior Treaty was signed just before the Huron Treaty. I believe it was 1848 for the Robinson Superior Treaty. And then, because our treaty was going to be a little more heavy because of the minerals that are in this area. I'm sure, I really hope that you learned a little bit about what is a treaty, but I'm going to share a little bit more of our perspective. And as you can see at the bottom left here, there's as I mentioned, there's those names. When our people didn't have those last names, we just had our spirit name. You're just known as this one person. Like myself, I said Atikameksheng. Tego means I am in my entirety. So on the far left, there's the name Atikameksheng, and that is my distant grandfather. He's like a great grandfather, and he was actually there in the fall time in Sault Ste. Marie when this treaty was signed. So I'm just going to take a quick break just to have a drink. And I'm just going to talk just a few more points just on the Robinson-Huron Treaty itself. And it was, there's a chief called Atikameksheng, and he's on the, if you see that picture, he's the chief at the top left. And that was the chief who was the main negotiator on behalf of all the other chiefs. It's almost like when you sit in council with all your chiefs, there's still one man who's still appointed. And that's why we have grand chiefs today. We have national chiefs. Even in a group of chiefs, there's always one chief that they say is going to be like the chief of the chiefs sort of thing. So that's basically how they looked at Atikameksheng. And Atikameksheng, he, in the signing of the treaty with Mr. William Robinson, he wanted to ensure that our people were going to have reserves. And I'm sure people have heard of, what is a reserve? It's land that we set aside for ourselves. And at the time, Atikameksheng, he wanted to set aside much grander reserves, like much larger reserves. And unfortunately, a lot of communities didn't get their land surveyed accordingly. I guess those surveyors they wanted to make the reserves as small as possible. That's what Canada wanted to do. But even with that being said, or that happening, we still have our reserve. But then apart from the reserve, we have our traditional hunting and trapping and fishing territory. And those are also rights that Mr. Shingwakos, or Chief Shingwakos, had to ensure that we were going to keep with this treaty, that we were going to keep those rights of being able to hunt and fish within our entire territory. So I can actually go anywhere amongst our territory and hunt, trap, fish any time of the year, unless it's in a reserve territory. Then I have to ask permission. And so yeah, these are all any place that's called a crown land, that's a place that I can go. And one very important part of this treaty doesn't say it in this document that I'm showing you today, but the treaty itself is actually a very it's a large document, right? And in that treaty, they had something called the escalator clause. And the escalator clause had to do with the annuity payment, an annuity payment that would be paid to every head of every reserve. Basically, every woman, child, man, elder was going to receive an annuity payment. And we did. In 1874, the treaty payment was the annuity payment was very low, and then it got raised to $4 in 1874. And every person once a year would receive a payment of $4 since in 1874. Now, if you could believe this is we're in 2022 today, and still to this day we receive $4 from the government, and that money is based on the resources extracted from the land. And where I live, my community is I can't really show it to you. I can't point it to you because, but I'm just above. Well, I'm in Sudbury, right? Sudbury is the closest city to Atikameksheng, where I'm from. So I'm about 20 miles west of Sudbury. So if you're familiar with the land, you can see where North Bay is. You could see where Manitoulin Island is. It would be just north of Manitoulin, and that would be Sudbury. And still in 2022, we receive $4. But if you think about where I'm from, we have Valley Inco, and there's been roughly $500 billion worth of ore extracted from the Sudbury Basin alone in the last 50 years, and that's just in that one part of the territory, and we're still only receiving $4. So in 2019, our people did a court claim, and it's called the Robinson-Huron Treaty litigation, and it's dubbed in the language, Ojibwe language, Wawin Damage Win, and we're actually fighting for that original written part in that treaty, which was the escalator clause to enhance that treaty annuity payment to something that's a little more feasible and actually is reflective of what has come out of the land over the last 50 years. So to some people, that's a little mind-blowing that we're still only receiving $4. But the thing is, it's amazing because we've actually won this case. There was a lot of pushback from the government. They fought extremely hard because they don't want to pay us, and but we've actually won. And where we're at today is this is the tricky part, is going back retroactively. How much money are we supposed to get within our territory? Because we're supposed to get basically like I don't know, it might not be per head, like going to each individual, but at least to our people, our reserves, maybe to our governance structures, back pay, basically, retroactive pay. But then the annuity case, or the annuity payment as well, would be increased much more, significantly much more than $4. So that's where we're at today. We've actually won this case. Now that, yeah, they're just dealing with the money side. That might take a couple of years. So I'm sure the government doesn't want to give us lots of money. They want to limit it as much as possible. And what's amazing though is because we've won this case, and once everything is dealt with, I believe we're setting the precedent for all of the other treaties amongst Canada. for them to increase their payments. Because you go out west, there's everywhere else. I'm telling you, it's $4. And if you go out to like Alberta, to a lot of the Cree communities, they get $5 each year. So it's not a lot of money, but that money was supposed to cover like an entire year's worth of food. Like if you can think about that, like $4 was a lot of money in 1874, but we're still receiving $4. And it's literally an RCMP member will come in, wearing red and all that, will come into the band office. I sign a piece of paper and I receive 2 toonies from the government. So, yeah. And that's what the clause was all about, to increase revenues from as resource extraction from the lands, and that the resources themselves increased. The cost of gold, let's say, there's lots of gold that comes out of Sudbury. Just by example, there's lots of nickel. We sell lots of nickel, especially to Japan, through Toyota, because they're the ones who first started creating hybrid cars. They made that technology, then all the other manufacturers started buying from them. That technology, because they want hybrid cars. But where does all that nickel come from to make that generator, or that dynamo, or that generator within a hybrid car? It comes from my land here in Sudbury, or Atikameksheng. We call the whole area Atikameksheng. So yeah, our treaty was adapted and expanded for the numbered treaties to come. So actually, one of our Robson Huron Treaty is one of the first treaties to be made in Canada, because all those numbered treaties came afterwards, starting around 1871. Our treaty, of course, 1850. So 1871 to about 1921, that's when the last treaty was made in Canada. And we used what was happening in America at the time, in the States. We used the American precedents, things that were happening there, and we used that in our area. And what's kind of sad is our chiefs here. This is touching on the Métis. I'm sure you've learned about the Métis peoples. Our chiefs, especially Mr. Shingwakos, their chief, I don't know why I call him Mr., but Chief Shingwakos, he wanted to ensure with Mr. Robinson a promise to look after the Métis rights, and which was sad because it was never fulfilled. That was never fulfilled, that the Métis would have rights to their own blocks of land, their own reserves and ties to the land. But the Supreme Court of Canada later on, actually not that long ago, about 2003, it's called the Powley case. The Supreme Court of Canada recognized the Métis hunting rights, and that set a standard. And ever since that happened, that was just a true sign of reconciliation, that the Métis have been here for so long. At least they're given those hunting rights within the territory. And then some communities did start getting some land to, like a reserve, to build homes and all those different things, and have their own government systems. And yeah, so that's that's a little bit of history. And now I'm going to, the next half hour, I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. But that's the Treaty of 1850, Robson Huron Treaty. There's a lot to unpack when talking about our treaties. Getting into this part, this is my favorite part of what I'm about to talk about here today, what I'm most passionate about. As you can see in this photo, this is actually some of my family. This is my family. These are my 2 sisters. And this is my dad here. His name's Petahtegoose. He was, of course, a former chief. He works today as a counselor in my community. And this is myself. And what we're holding here, it might look familiar to many of you, but it is, in my language, an Opawagan. also known as a pipe. Now we call a pipe like this a ceremonial pipe. You can call a pipe either a ceremonial pipe, but one thing I wouldn't call a pipe a peace pipe. That's not a word that we use. It's not a word. You always got to look to the Ojibwe language for the culture and the teachings of our culture. It's all encapsulated within the language itself. So Opawagan is our word for pipe. That I encourage you to write these words down, by the way, because I'm going to share what each one means. I didn't put the English beside them because I want you to really listen. The Opawagan itself, it doesn't say that it is a pipe or that it has anything to do with peace. That's I don't know. That's like a Hollywood type thing or like a TV thing, where they call it a peace pipe. We just call it a pipe, or if you want to call it, you can call it a ceremonial pipe. But just call it a pipe, or Opawagan or Powagan. You also hear it without the O sound. And relating to what we're going to be talking about here in the next bit, this pipe here was brought back to our people this summer on because we have ties to the people in Manitoulin Island. We're all Anishnawbek. We all speak the same language. Manitoulin Island is only like an hour away, hour and a half away. So they're not far. And we were invited, our family was invited to come back to a pipe that actually came back to our peoples. And this pipe is from 1836. It's called the bond head pipe. And this was one of the pipes used in creation of the treaties of the entire Manitoulin Island. And the only place that didn't sign that treaty was Wikwemkong. And that's why they're called an unceded reserve. They didn't sign that treaty. And they have a huge land base, by the way. But this pipe, it has a story behind it, and I'll tell it as quickly as possible. But basically, this pipe was being sold it was on the 11th hour in an auction down in Los Angeles, California, just this summer, like just a few months ago. And word got out that this pipe was there in this auction, and that message got brought all the way back to our chiefs here in our territory. And we're like, oh my goodness, that pipe is about to be sold in an auction. And so the chiefs here, we went through the government and said, you have to help us buy this pipe as a sign of reconciliation. You have to help us. And the government actually said yes, amazingly. They offered up to $50,000 to say, we'll help you get that pipe back home. But of course they wanted some part of it where they said, well, in order to do this, you're going to have to help. You're going to have to display this pipe at the ROM, right? The Royal or that big museum there. Is that Toronto? Yeah, the ROM. Anyway, but they said you have to do that. And so that's what they did. So they contacted that auction house and said, we want to get this pipe. And they tried getting it from the auction house, and they said, well, no, you actually have to, bid in the auction. And there's some big bids on this. And then they said, well, they wrote them a letter. And then what the auction house did was really nice thing. They actually sent that letter to the guy who owned this pipe. And he looked at it and said, oh, wow, these are the original peoples. So that guy actually withdrew the pipe from the auction, lost a little bit of money, but decided to do a private sell to our people to bring this pipe back home. And through the COVID process, they actually sent it by bus and actually sent this pipe back home to our people. So this is like an amazing thing to be holding this pipe again. I'm smiling because I'm like the energy that I felt from this pipe, and it's amazing. And I'll just share this with all of you. I don't share this with everybody, but it's because I'm telling this story. I don't tell the story with everybody. But when we brought this pipe back home, something almost extraordinary happened. Magical happened. Something you can't explain. And you might be thinking I'm full of BS with what I'm about to share, but it's not. this pipe, when we brought it back home in ceremony, we didn't load that pipe yet. Or we didn't light that pipe. We loaded the pipe. Loaded the pipe with a sema, which is tobacco. And as part of that ceremony, that pipe actually began to smoke on itself. Smoke started coming out of that pipe, and nobody lit it. Someone put tobacco in it. So you might be thinking, no way, that there's no way. But it actually did happen. I seen it with my own eyes. And as I'm telling that story, I'm almost tearing up a bit, because it's like when people say they've seen a ghost or something, you know, there's a feeling you get where it's like, this isn't real, but I've seen it with my own eyes. It actually is real. It's like seeing a UFO or something. Like, it's almost unbelievable, but like, you've seen it. And, you know, you got to believe people sometimes when they see these things. So anyways, that's a bit about that pipe. We brought it back home, and that is the Opawagan. So as part of the spiritual intent of the treaty making process, when our chiefs came together in Sault Ste. Marie with the Crown of Great Britain, we sat down with them, with Mr. Robinson here, William Robinson, our chiefs. What was brought in to that space, into that circle of when we made that treaty to the Crown? The most important part of us making that treaty with them was our signature on a piece of paper, our signature. And our folks at the time, you know, it's not that we were illiterate. We had our own ways of writing, especially on birch bark, and we had our own ways of delivering messages through writing. But a lot of the times those writings were images. And so for us, our chiefs actually either wrote an X, or a lot of our chiefs were actually quite skilled at writing their clan symbol. That's what I'm saying. That's how important it is for us to have our clans and know our clans, is that was actually our signature as well. And so for the Crown, that was important for us. As soon as we wrote that, the treaty's made, right? For us, that piece of paper didn't mean very much. It's just a piece of paper with some writings on it. For us, there was an intention of when we were going to be making that treaty. And so what was brought into that space was our Opawaganuk. Opawagan by itself is the pipe. The pipes were brought in. Opawaganuk. If you put AK at the end of that word, Opawaganuk, then you're saying many pipes. So all the pipes were brought into, of all those chiefs were brought into that circle. And I'll tell you why. Asema was brought into that circle. Asema is tobacco. Asema was brought in. And I'll talk about the last two, then the middle two. Maybe I should have put them in order. The Odewegan was brought into that circle. Odewegan is the drum, the big drum. Odewegan. So our songs were being sung. The Megaze Atik were brought in. Megaze is the eagle. Atik is a stick or a piece of wood. So Megaze is our eagle staff. Other nations around the world, Canada, you know, Canada has a national flag, right? A maple leaf. And then, you know, United States has stars and stripes. Overseas, they got the Union Jack, and then there's all the other, you know, flags. And that's important for them. For us, we have what's called an eagle staff. And I don't have a picture of that here today, but I do have the picture of the stars here. And our eagle staffs actually look like something, a very familiar shape up in the stars, which is known as the Big Dipper. For us, we call that the eagle staff in the sky, the one that watches over us. And our eagle staff is it's a staff. Usually it's made out of wood that's been struck by lightning, or it's made by diamond willow, one of the two. But usually it's a piece of wood from a tree that's been struck by lightning. Sometimes there's an antler on it, or sometimes an eagle head, like Might be an eagle head that was stuffed, taxidermied, all that. But the important part is the feathers that come out from that staff. Usually there's 13 feathers. So those staffs are just the same way as like the Canadian flag is to Canadians. Those eagle staffs, they represent our people. So those were brought into the circle. And what all of those things help do, our pipe, the tobacco that's being offered, smoked, those drum, the Odewe gun, the drum, the songs that are being sung, those eagle staffs are like our grandfathers being brought in, grandmothers and grandfathers. What we're ensuring is that our creator, and that's the word here, Gijem Nado. Gije means kind or gentle. Manido is one with great power, a spirit with great power. And so Gije Manido could be looked at as a kind, a gentle spirit with great power. That is our creator. Our creator is very forgiving, very loving. If you mess up, at the end of the day, your creator is loving. Your creator will hug you. That's how we look at our creator. It's not a vengeful God, let's just say. When we do all of these things, when we light that Opawagan, what we are doing is we are invoking the spirits of our ancestors, and we're invoking the spirit of our creator to be here with us at this time before we sign this agreement. We're actually not making, like the pipe itself is like a conduit to the spirit realm. And the Asama has this very sacred gift of being able to connect with that when it's burned. Just like all of you out there, you all carry gifts. You all carry gifts. And I'm not talking material gifts. I'm talking gifts that you have. Some of you might be good at fitness, running, soccer. Some of you are really good at math. Some of you are good at science. Some of you are amazing caretakers of your family. Some of you struggle with that, but you might have other strengths. We all have different gifts that we carry from our parents and then also from our creator. Now, our medicines also carry very sacred gifts, and all of our medicines carry gifts. And a sema is one of those very important gifts of our people. That's the tobacco. A sema has the role, the responsibility of carrying, and the gift of carrying our messages, our thoughts, our emotions, and ultimately our intentions. So when I pick up tobacco, when I offer it to the fire, or I offer it to the water or to the wind on a mountaintop, I like offering it to the wind. It'll carry it. But quite often you'll see people, if you're at like a fire somewhere, people offer tobacco to that fire, sema to the fire. What they're doing is they're praying with that tobacco, and they know that tobacco holds that gift. That tobacco is going to carry that gift, and it's going to burn. That smoke is going to rise up to the spirit. So when we put tobacco in that pipe is acting as that conduit to talk to that spirit. And now we're talking to Gijem Nado, because we are making law. And Nakanagewin, that's the final word in this part of this presentation here, this slide. Nakanagewin is our word for law. That's our word for law. So we're going to make that Nakanagewin with Gijem Nado. So our peoples didn't just make a treaty with the Crown of Great Britain. We actually made treaties with our creator. So for us, Nakanagewin is a very important word in our language. Nakanagew means in the direction of where I point my pipe. The pipe, when it's pointed, we're pointing to things. We're pointing to the land. We're pointing to the 4 directions. If anyone ever does a pipe ceremony with you one day, or you ever get to see that happening, you'll see the pipe being spun. You'll see it be brought up to the creator, pointed at someone's heart. And Nakanagewin is a law. So with this treaty making process of the Robinson-Huron Treaty, and I'm sure all of the other treaties, but other nations have different ways of doing making treaties, but I'm just sharing how us Anishinaabe peoples did our treaty over here in Robson Treaty, or Robson Territory, that we made law and we pointed that pipe to our creator. We said that basically we will uphold our side of the treaty no matter what, because Nakanagewin is our word for law, and our idea of law is unbreakable, cannot be manipulated, nothing like that. So long as that pipe was smoked and those eagle staffs are present, our chiefs are present, praying for the waters present, all of those things are happening. The songs of our people sung with the Odewe gun. The Odewe gun again is the drum. Present, all those things are happening. And we're honoring and respecting our creator. That creator is going to love us and watch over us and know that it's basically creator's going to have our back for the years and years to come, so long as we follow these processes. And so we've always upheld our side of the treaty as Anishinaabe peoples, and that's the biggest point that I wanted to share with everyone today, is that we did. Now Canada, unfortunately, hasn't always upheld their side of the treaty, and because Canadian law can be manipulated, it doesn't always have to be followed. They can change laws. Government can change laws and to effect, and they've been doing it for years. That's where that whole idle no more movement came from. Is the government said we are going to eliminate some of these environmental protection laws that protect water in order for us to extract more resources from territories out in British Columbia, in Alberta. They destroyed their own laws. For us, that's not even thinkable. That's not even possible. Law is forever. There's another word I maybe should have shared here, ga-ge-ge, which means eternity. Law will be eternal, so long as humanity is alive. Our laws will be eternal. And so, going back to Idle No More, that's what they did, and yeah, they destroyed their own laws, and it can go right down to the littlest thing, like someone getting a speeding ticket. Someone might have been doing 70 in a 50, and they get pulled over, and the cop says, "Oh, how come you were speeding today?" "Oh, I'm rushing to get somewhere." And he goes back to his car, comes back, and doesn't matter what you were about to say to him. Let's just say this cop is going to give you a ticket. Now, 20 minutes later, somebody gets pulled over again. Let's say they're doing 20 over. Now that cop can decide, do I want to follow the law today, or do I want to give this next person a warning? So let's just say he gives them a warning. What does that say about Canadian law? Can it be manipulated? Yes. Does every aspect of the law have to be followed? No. Can it be manipulated for the government's benefit and not for the benefit of the First Peoples? Absolutely, it can be. So it's unfortunate, but that's that's just how things have been over the course of since the last 172 years, when as far as this treaty has been signed. And so there's lots of ongoing work ahead. Yeah, that's about as much as I wanted to share on the spiritual intent, and that's the message that I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, how am I going to cram all of these ideas into 1 hour? But let's just say, there is a lot of work, ongoing work ahead. The Robson-Huron Treaty litigation, I do want to share these two resources with you. You can screenshot this, or you can write it down, wawindamagewin.com. You could type that into Google, or the Robson-Huron Treaty 1850. And you can get more information on this treaty litigation, this litigation between ourselves here in the RHT and the Crown of Great Britain. we're still battling. We've pretty well won, but we're still dealing with the monies. But these are two amazing resources to go over, because of the importance of that litigation, as mentioned. All the other treaties, like, you're going to see so much change over the next year, and with all of these cases of those annuity claims, claims going into action, and then coming into fruition, each and every single one of those cases is going to reference the RHT of 1850, which is the treaty that I'm under. So it's very important that I was brought in here today to share that with you all. And these pictures here, again, that's my dad. This is a wampum belt. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with wampum belts. This one here is called the dish with one spoon. This little belt here was one of the belts brought in during the time of making treaties with all the other nations coming into the land. It's called the Treaty of Niagara. And there was a bunch of these wampum belts brought in. This particular one was brought in. It's called the dish with one spoon. And that dish is like the dish of the resources and the hunting and the fishing and all of those places, those things where we, those ideas of where we get our food from the land, they're all going to go into this one dish. But now there's only one spoon. And so we're all going to have to eat from that, whether you're a part of the crown or you're the First Peoples, we're all going to have to eat from the same place, the same dish. So yeah, that's what that wampum belt represents. There's also a two-row wampum. I'm not sure if you've heard of that before. That's called the Gaswenta. That's literally a wampum belt with two purple rows side by side. And that one there, that was made with the Dutch. And basically it's saying that we're going to paddle in our canoe on here on this pathway, and you're going to paddle your boat or your ship on this pathway. And we're not going to cross. You're not to cross over into our lands and impede your laws into our people. Unfortunately, again, that happened. We follow Canadian law, but we also have our own laws. And so that's what that wampum belt is supposed to represent. So those are wampum belts. You can also do searches on wampum belts if you're not familiar. That's what that particular wampum belt is. Wampum itself is it's from the shell called the quahog shell. It's that little shell that's purple and it's white. The original beads used, that's the replica that my dad's holding there. The original beads used took roughly 40 hours for one person to make one bead. And some of these wampum belts had roughly 20,000. Some of them had 30,000 beads. So it was literally entire communities making these wampum, like tens of, like our people's. We had much greater numbers back in the day, but our peoples were very skilled in making these, especially the Mohawk or the Haudenosaunee. So the Mohawk, Cayuga, Onondaga, all of those people that, Oneidas, all of those people that fall under the Haudenosaunee, or the people of the Longhouse, which is like the Grand River, also known as Six Nations. I'm sure you've heard of that, down more towards where all of you are. And actually, I'm going to Six Nations next week to do some work, which is amazing. And just looking at the time, I know this presentation, we're not giving time for comments or questions, but I'm sure Sky Anderson can leave you my email. But before I leave, I do want to share about this sword that I'm holding here. This sword is a replica, actually. It's a replica of the sword that's actually buried with my grandfather, Atikameksheng. This sword was given to him from another chief who fought in the War of 1812. And that's one of the last biggest wars in Turtle Island. When I say Turtle Island, I'm talking about North America. If you look at it from afar, just search up Turtle Island, maybe write that down as well. Search up Turtle Island on a Google map and it'll blow your mind if you see a diagram that This entire land looks like a turtle, and our people have called it Turtle Island for a long, long time. And how did our people know that? We just we just did, let's just say. But that sword right there is actually a replica of what was actually buried with my grandfather. So that's one of those early Confederate swords. It's really cool. And so that is pretty well, that's going to be it. So our word for saying thank you is miigwech. And I'll share this with you all. One last teaching to leave you all with is when we say the word miigwech, we're not just thanking you. We are thanking, we're not just thanking you. We are thanking the Creator for blessing you with the gifts that you carry today. And I'm not just thanking you. I'm thanking the Creator for blessing you with those gifts that you have today, so you can help me. That's what miigwech means. It's a much deeper thought. We're always acknowledging that there's a spirit that works through us. That's why in our language, we don't say you're welcome or no problem or anytime, those things we say in English. In our language or in our way, we just nod or we say nahao. We acknowledge. It's an acknowledgement. So when someone says miigwech to you, you could just say nahao. And it just means, yes, the Creator did work through me today so I can help you. So we're not just taking ownership. The Creator does exist. So that's the last thing I'm going to leave you with today. I shared as much as I possibly could in a short period of time. And I just want to say miigwech to Sky for having me. So that's
I'm
going to be it.
say miigwech to you, Brandon. That was amazing presentation, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. That was it was really impactful. Oh man, I'm frozen on the screen, but I I really appreciate everything that you've shared and really teaching us today. So I know that I'm still learning too, and what you've shared was really hit home for me. So I'm really grateful for you. And then too, I just wanted to also thank Lauren, who has helped me through this week. She's done internal comms and helped me out quite a bit, and I'm super grateful for that. But yeah, if anybody on the call has any comments or questions for Brandon, I will connect with him and then get back to you. But miigwech for joining us all this week, and I hope everybody learned something new and had a good takeaways. Chimigwech again, Brandon. It was great.
Oh, Bama P, that's our way of saying goodbye. But it just means we'll see each other again. So Bama P, Gawamin, we'll see each other again. We'll cross paths. So thanks again.
Take care.
Yeah, enjoy your afternoon, everybody.